Hello and welcome to part 96 of this series, Programming a Chess Engine in C. You may have noticed there's been a little bit of a gap between the last video, and which was part 95, and this video, which is part 96. In fact, the gap says 8 years here. It's nearly 9 years, because that was January the 24th, 14, and I'm filming this 1st of December 2022. At the time of doing part 95, we'd reached quite a milestone, I think, self-contained program with opening books built into it as well. And in the years in between, I've been very pleasantly surprised by how many people have actually taken this series as a base and then built upon it themselves, and invariably made much, much better engines as a result. At the time of finishing part 95 in the opening books, I didn't really see anything else that we could really add to it. However, recent discussions on the Discord server with people who are involved in computer chess have convinced me that we could actually add some features into Vice to improve it, whilst also still keeping sort of the simplicity to the engine as well. First thing we're going to do is make some small fixes to the engine, because believe it or not, despite my absolutely perfect programming, there are some bugs in the engine. There aren't too many as far as I know, and we're going to fix those in the next video, and we're also going to fix up the make file as well. Once we've done that, we'll fix this issue that quite a few people pointed out where the hash output is truncated. This is due to the replacement scheme, which is basic and really terrible inside Vice. So we're going to fix that so we get a nice principal variation to the correct depth for each level in the search, and also consequence of that will actually get slightly better performance from the engine as well. When we've done that, we're going to get rid of this input polling, which is a cost to performance for the engine as well. That's where during the search we do this checkup and see if the GUI or the user has entered stop or something like this. A much cleaner way of doing this is actually to use a separate thread for input and a separate thread for search. Once we have a thread in, we're actually understanding threading, and that means we can add the first really big feature, and that's something that a lot of people have asked me for, and that is to actually do what's known as lazy SMP. So that's where we're actually going to do parallel processing. So we're going to think on multiple cores, and then what we're going to do with these multiple cores is share the hash table between them, and you'll see that you get quite a big performance boost from doing this if you don't manage to introduce a huge amount of bugs at the same time. Once that's done, we can then look at actually doing some tuning and actually trying to tune the evaluation values inside Vice to improve the performance as well. Now I have to confess, because there's a big gap, I can't remember exactly which code we finished on in part 95. So I'm going to start the next video from the code that you can download from bluefeversoft.com. You can click the download button, and inside there is a folder with some source code, and that will be the source code that I'm going to use as a basis to start. For writing the actual code, I'm going to be using the Visual Studio Code IDE. You can see that here, it's open in front of me. I've already got the code that's been downloaded open and on the left side here. So we're moving away from Notepad and Text Wrangler and jumping, like pretty much everybody else, into Visual Studio Code. The code is on GitHub. I've deleted the old repository with all of the zip files, and I've now created a new repository with the actual source code on it. And what I'm going to do is make a new branch for each of the videos so you can find the code for the relevant video easily enough, I hope anyway. The other thing I've done is quickly compile the code that I've downloaded. I'm using MinGW32 make here because we're many years later on, just to run the make file. It seems to have run okay. There's a small warning here, but we'll get rid of that when we do the fixes. And then I've actually run the program as well, just to check everything's okay here. Also, I've got a Linux box here as well with Kali Linux on it, and I've just run make with the source code here on this as well, just to make sure that everything is compiling okay on Linux and it's running, and it seems to be. So the next video then we'll get on with those small fixes before adding some of the new features.